Anyone who knows anything about AAA game development will understand that creating games of any size, but especially on a massive scale, isn't easy. And with a series as ambitious and expansive as The Elder Scrolls, it is even more difficult. So it's probably not surprising that some pieces of content in Skyrim just don't make the cut. Features can be cut due to time constraints, quality concerns, or straight up not working. Some of that manages to be discovered after the fact though, and a lot of it is pretty interesting. So this week we're going to be making our way through just a few of the many features that never quite made it into Skyrim. We'll start with a small but interesting change that was made to the game. The Elder Scrolls is known for giving players the ability to explore and make their own choices, but there are some people you meet in the game that are basically invincible. No, I'm not talking about characters that are marked essential, although yeah, them too. I'm talking about children. As you probably all know, the player isn't really allowed to do anything to them throughout Skyrim. This wasn't always going to be the case though. Cut dialogue from the game reveals that at one point there were plans to allow the player to execute kids if they wanted to, in keeping with the rest of the game. For unknown reasons though, this was changed well before release, leaving all the children of Skyrim safe from your bloody rampages. Until you install that mod, of course. Speaking of Skyrim, divorce was another feature that almost made it into the game. There was even a whole quest dedicated to divorcing your spouse if you chose to do it, and apparently this made it pretty far into development, with fully voice acted lines being found in the game's files. The lines include stuff like,
"You're a monster. Leave and never come back."
We have nothing to talk about. I can't believe what you did to me.
But that's not all. Apparently it was also possible to remarry, since there are lines like,
"All right, we'll start again, but watch yourself."
And,
"You're testing my patience, but very well. I'll give you another chance."
In the end though, Bethesda decided to drop divorce altogether, leaving marriages just a bit happier in Tamriel. One of the most interesting things cut from Skyrim is the possibility of a much more advanced and dynamic civil war. Sure, the battle between the Stormcloak Rebellion and the Imperial Legion was pretty memorable in the game we got, but there was originally meant to be a lot more of it. Large-scale sieges were initially planned for every major city in the game, with there even being a possibility of winning or losing them based off your actions. There was even going to be quests where the player tried to get the soldiers to defect from one side to the other, possibly changing the course of the war. Killing enemy generals, freeing political prisoners, attacking settlements, and even the ability to give money to the families who'd lost men in the war. The Civil War story was planned to be incredibly ambitious. One of the cooler things cut was the ability to purchase land and set patrols on them. Unfortunately, as we all know, these inclusions were not meant to be, and it is generally thought that time constraints, along with Skyrim's engine being unable to handle the huge battles as well, is what kept them out. But hey, there's a mod for it, but it's pretty buggy as it stands, or at least the last time I played it. Ellis the Fair, the Jarl of Harfingar, and the widow of High King Torrig, is a fairly minor character in Skyrim, but she is still marked as essential and cannot be killed. That wasn't always going to be the case though. One scrapped quest in Skyrim shows that the player originally was meant to be able to kill Ellis to appease the Daedric prince Bothea. Not much is known about the quest, but some of the left behind dialogue does give us a hint of who would have ascended to the throne, with a guard saying, "Damn Stormcloaks, first Torrig and now Ellis, let's hope Erikar fares better than they did." Speaking of rulers getting bumped off, a lot of unused scripts and dialogues in the game's file show that the Great Nord warrior, Rongar, was originally going to replace Jarl Balgruuf at the end of the quest, the Whispering Door. This is because not just Nelkir, but all of Balgruuf's children were meant to fall under the influence of Mephala, and all three of them would end up killing their father. This of course never happened, leaving the Jarl still in charge. These are just some examples of content cut from Skyrim, but if you have any more let us know, and we'd be happy to include them in a future episode. Okay, next up is our comment showcase. In our episode about the similarities between the Imperials and the Roman Empire, Orlel East also had a theory of who they could be based off, saying, the Empire is also based off the British Empire, since the Imperials were enslaved by the Eyelids, similar to how the Britons were enslaved by the Romans and Normans. Also, you've got the East Empire Company, being a parallel to the still existing East India Trading Company. What do you guys think? Do you agree with the theory, or do you have another idea of who inspired the Imperials? Now for our shoddy comment, which comes from Rich Red Sail 96 Montalvo this week, who says, I don't also start a rebellion, but when I do, I'm a puppet to the Aldemary Dominion, and I don't even know it. Ulfric Stormcloak. Damn! You all seem to hate the Stormcloaks. Is anyone willing to stick up for these guys? Finally, it's time for some trivia. The answer to last week's Foley question was in fact D, the Brotherhood of Steel. This week we want to know who was the first ever ruler to establish a centralized kingdom in Skyrim. Was it A, King Harold, B, High King Borgas, C, King Olaf One-Eye, or is it D, High King Giles of Dale? Tell me your answer in the comment section below, and while you're at it, tell me what piece of cut content that was featured in today's episode that you would have liked to see in the final product of Skyrim. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, make sure to drop a like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you've not done so already, and I'll see you guys on another video.